everybody, and welcome to another playoff special of Touchdown in the UK, the UK-based NFL Pickster podcast that's been running in its debut season this year. We're coming right up until the end of it now. We had a special playoff preview for you last week, and my word, the playoff football last weekend really did live up to expectations. From a rookie perspective, never seen the playoffs before, I've got to say, the excitement was off the chart. Really enjoyed it. So we have been picking the games, the results that we have thought were going to come through in terms of the Super Bowl Challenge by Sky Sports, feeding on from the NFL Pick'em season that we had. And surprise, surprise, Big Cliff is on top again. Our number 5 pickster in the world, according to Sky Bet Pick'ems, again, is the top of the Super Bowl Challenge Touchdown in the UK Mini League, with getting just one game wrong last weekend. It's been a cracking weekend for Cliff. It was certainly worthwhile him staying up until 1:30 in the morning, UK time, just to get to the start of the game to watch his beloved Browns win a playoff game. The first playoff win since when, Cliff?
1994.
Right, we're coming to you first, Cliff. Just talk us through that feeling. Monday morning, 4 a.m. UK time. You must have been up in the clouds.
So, yeah, I did, as you mentioned, I stayed up, I watched it. But it's a weird time in the UK, and it for that, because I just wanted to text you guys, especially Nicko, as he previously said in the group earlier. I can't wait for the Steelers to pummel you. So he was the first on my hit list that I wanted to text. But yeah, it was the weirdest first quarter I've ever seen in football. I was just saying to you, Theo, I was sat here absolutely sweating because I put the fire on, and I just didn't want to move. I didn't want to jinx anything. I wanted to stay still and just let's watch the match. And then eventually we got the job done, and the Browns is the Browns.
So, as we get into the final few weeks of the season, there aren't actually that many games for us to talk about. There's only 4 games this week for us to talk about. So we're going to dedicate a little bit of our pod today to focus on last week's picks first. So we're going to go back to each pickster here. We're going to talk through how our games panned out, because we did pretty well last weekend. Nicko got 4 out of 6 picks right, same as myself, and Cliff got 5 out of 6 picks right. We've only got 4 games this week to talk about, though, as I mentioned before. So, last week, Nicko, you were picking on the Bills, Colts, and Washington Bucks, and I believe you got both picks right?
Yeah, I got both right.
So, talk us through those games. Did you get a chance to catch any of them?
Yeah, so I watched Bills, Colts. I didn't watch Washington Bucks. As you said, the same as the Steelers, Browns. It was a 1 a.m. Kickoff, so I didn't stay up for that one. Bills, Colts ended 27-24 to the Bills, and as similar to Cliff's Browns, they reached the divisional round for the first time since 1995. It was a good watch, to be fair, and as I said last week, it was going to be closer than the spread was last week, which was 6.5 in favour of the Bills. And as I've seen plenty of times before, and you'll have heard me mention in years gone by, it was all set up, fourth quarter, down by less than a score, Phil Rivers with a ball in his hand. I thought he was going to do it. I thought he was going to get the comeback and get the win, but yeah, it wasn't to be for him, unfortunately. And another season goes passing him by.
I mean, I really enjoyed the Bills game, but I've got to say, Phil Rivers was an absolute embarrassment at the end of that.
Well, it weren't. There were no players open for him. But we discussed.
Don't play until the game finishes. Is that what they have to do?
What a lifeline with that decision.
I'm just about to say, Cliff, that we were discussing the Zach Pascal fumble. Well, down by contact, but what we thought was a fumble. It looked like he was getting back up, but they said it was too close to call.
It was a fumble.
Right, Washington Bucks then. Obviously, you didn't watch the game, Nicko. Panned out as you expected. Is it going to be one final heyday for Tom Brady?
I didn't watch the game, but I did try and catch the highlights of it. And as you said, it was closer than expected. Well, closer than I expected, but the spread was spot on, I think. It was 8.5, and they won by 8. Washington were without Alex Smith, but they got Taylor Heinicke. He stepped in and played a great part, to be fair to him. But Brady threw for near 400 yards and got 2 touchdowns to Tampa Bay get the win, and played Drew Brees in the next round.
Yeah, it's the granddads against each other the next round, I hear. Combined age of what was it, Cliff?
85.
85 veterans. Right. So over to me. I had one pick that I thought was pretty straightforward, Saints Bears, and it turned out to be a pretty straightforward game, to be honest. So 21-9 finished. Bears, pretty embarrassing if you look at again, I didn't watch the game. Listeners, I'm not afraid to say that a 20-10 kickoff UK time is a little bit late for me. I do like my early bedtime, so it was a bit too late for me, unfortunately, that one. But 21-9 and Bears scoring in the final play of the fourth quarter just to try and get a consolation, some consolation points. So pretty convincing win as expected. And as we mentioned, sets up an absolute corking game in the next round of Saints Bucks, one that I know we're all looking forward to as part of the Touchdown UK team. And checking the statistics as well, when I was looking after the game, it's great to see Chris Kamara get on the score sheet for the Saints. I hope he can get on the score sheet again this week.
It was a nice walk-off touchdown as well by Jimmy Graham for the Bears. No time left on the clock, one-handed catch, caught it, touchdown, and just ran straight down the tunnel.
Fair play. It's one way to do it when you're losing 21-9. Right, my other pick was the game of the round. I had Cliff's Mighty Browns. Again, far too late for my bedtime. There was no way I was staying up till 1:30 a.m. on a Monday morning when I've got work. So I was eagerly waiting there. The moment I woke up, the first thing I did, I've got to be honest with you here. I'm being honest, listeners, and Cliff knows I've got a soft spot for the Browns anyway. It's not just because it's his team. In fact, if anything, that would put me off them. But I do like the Browns, and I've backed him a lot this season. The first thing I did Monday morning, 6 a.m. when I woke up, was check the score. And my word, what a shock I had. That first quarter was just phenomenal, I've got to say. And as Cliff said, he couldn't move from his front room. He was sweating his balls off. He had that fire on full blast, but he was scared to do anything. He was absolutely quivering. And I don't blame him, to be honest. 28-0. And for the game to start like it did, with that ball to fly over Big Ben's head and the Browns to get going, you know you're on to a winner there. Lady Luck is clearly on your side. So what a cracking game. I'm really looking forward to the Chiefs Browns this week. It's my pick, so I'm going to talk to you about it in a little while. Right, Cliff, you had Titans, Ravens, Seahawks, Rams. Seahawks, Rams, the only one that you got wrong, I believe, this week. Talk us through those, please.
Yeah, so I had Seahawks, Rams, and as you mentioned, it is the only game of the week that I got wrong. And I did say last week it was a coin flip game for me. So I did expect it to be close. I did expect it to go either way. And I went with my heart. I went with Seahawks. And I say that because I've got them in a work sweepstake. So I really wanted them to win it. Not win the whole thing. I wanted them to at least have a chance. And the Rams' defense was phenomenal. It looked like they was playing against a brick wall at times. So, yeah, I think I'm not too upset with that because, like I said before, it was a 50-50 game, and I just think the Rams was the team that showed up on the day. They had a few things that went the way. The punt return, and he fumbled it halfway through the fourth. I think that just gave the Rams the momentum then to just finish the game off. And then my other choice was Ravens v the Titans, and I went with the Ravens, and I got that one correct. And I think I said last week again that I think the Titans will slow them down, and they only scored 20 points, which, considering over the last 5 weeks they've scored 37 points on average, the Ravens. They did well to hold them to 20 points, and I think the Titans started really well. I watched the first quarter, and I thought this is going to be a very close game. But then I think it was 3rd and 9 with 2 minutes left of the first half, and Lamar Jackson just was phenomenal. I mean, you text us straight away, Theo, saying, now I know why people rave about Lamar Jackson, because that run was unbelievable. And I just think to go from being behind and then all of a sudden leveling the scores and so on, I just think that gives the Ravens the momentum in the second half. And then the last 2 minutes, Tannehill had the ball. I still think he could have tied the game. So it was a close game. And then there was the interception, which led to the Ravens dancing on the logo, which was a bit controversial. So, yeah, it was a close game, but I just think the Ravens are a strong team, and I fancy them to win this week, even though it's not my pick. Shouldn't give away too many tips.
I mean, basically now, Cliff, you've told us 3 out of 4. You will tell us 3 out of 4. That's up to you, man. That's fine. You're a confident man. You know, you trust in your picks. You were top 5 in the world. Who blame you? Why not? I have got to say there, Cliff, I've got to echo that. Watching Lamar Jackson really blew me away, to be honest. I'd seen bits of him across the season. I'd seen, obviously, the fuss about him on Twitter and things like that. But that run, that touchdown, that come out of nothing, looked like that they were going to really struggle to break through that Titans defence. There was no throwing options on, and he just made it out of nothing. Beat several men, and yeah, really blew me away. Exciting player for the Ravens, got to say. So that brings us on to this week's picks. Then we've got 4 games this week. As I said, we're getting into the real serious money time when it comes to the end of the season. As I mentioned just as well, Cliff's got 2 of these picks and he's already told us that he's going for Ravens over Bills. So you may as well, we may as well all know Cliff's 4 picks because the other one he hasn't picked is Chiefs Browns. And we know where he's going on that one. So listeners, if you want to pick the same as the top 5 picks in the world, listen closely now. Right, Cliff, to you first then. Packers Rams, 9:35 in the PM, UK time, this Saturday. Who are you going for?
I think it's going to be a very good game, this one. But I found this one easier to pick than my other choice, which we'll discuss in a minute. So we've got the Packers, who are the number 1 in terms of points per game on offense, against the Rams, who are the number 1 in the defense in terms of points per game. So it's going to be a tight game. The Rams defense, as I mentioned, just looked brilliant last week. I thought that was the difference in the game against the Seahawks. But I just think overall Rodgers is going to get the job done. I think home advantage, even though there's no fans really there, but I just think Rodgers is going to get the job done and the Packers are going to be moving on to the next round.
Yeah, he's literally the typical example, the best example you can get of attack versus defence in that game. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Nicko, then over to you. Your only pick of the week. Bills, Ravens. Sounds like it's going to be an absolute belter. 1:15 a.m. Sunday morning UK time. I don't think I'll be staying up for that one. I know you're a bit more hardcore than me, but I think that might even be a bit too much for you. What do you reckon for that?
I might actually stay up for it. Based on the spread, looking at the spread, this is the closest game of the round. I can understand why that's the case. Both teams, when they're on form, as we've mentioned from the last round, they can put up big scores. Cliff just gave you, I think it was 37 was the average the Ravens score, and the Bills has got to be similar to that as well. So it'd be interesting to see if it ends up being a big shootout, similar to the Chiefs Rams a couple of years ago. But in a nice tight game, I like to have a little look into the stat. You know, one of my favourites is Football Outsiders, weighted DVOA. So they have Bills as number 1 and Ravens as number 7. So based on more recent games, Bills have the advantage according to them. But when you base it purely on the regular season, they're actually 4th and 5th.
It does seem like it's going to be a really close one, this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close one. But I'm going to go with the Bills. From what I've seen a bit more of them this year, I think that they might have what it takes just to edge out the Ravens.
And I have got to say, listeners, I got called out on Twitter about this last week. I have got a little soft spot for the Bills. I've got a very close friend who's a Bills fan, who's a bit of a rookie himself. Picked the team at the start of the season, and what a team to pick in your first NFL season. Came from nowhere, storming through the playoffs, and they would be my underdog story. They're the ones that I really want to go ahead and steam through. So I feel like they've got the momentum leading up to the playoffs. As I said before, you all know I've got a little soft spot for the Washington football team, but they didn't really have a chance in these playoffs. I've got to say I'd written them off before it even started. But the Bills, I really do think have got a shout here. I'm going to be backing the Bills as well. Really hope that they get through this one. And then they've got an absolute corking game then lined up, whoever they face next. And that comes to me. So I've got Chiefs Browns. The spread on this is the largest, and it is looking at the minute of 10 points in favour of the Chiefs. And I really can't see the Chiefs winning by 10 points. So as Nicko is going to mention in a minute, I think the Browns plus 10 is a really good bet this week. With that in mind, though, I went against the Browns last week and got punished for it. I've backed the Browns most of the season, but I've got to stick with my head here and can't go with my heart. I've got to stick with my head, and I'm really sorry, Cliff, and I'm really sorry to the Browns fans. I am going the Chiefs in this one. Cliff did predict this at the start of the season. He predicted that the Browns would beat the Steelers, and he did think that the Browns would lose to the Chiefs. I'm not going to press you on it now, Cliff, but I reckon maybe your pick may have switched on that.
If I'm honest, my pick is still the Chiefs at the minute. I just think for the Browns, it's almost like a free bet game for us. It's almost like we've done well, we got here, and now the pressure's off the Browns. But I just think Stefanski's going to expect more. He's still going to expect to win in this round. So I don't know. I'm slightly gaining confidence as we go through the week.
One thing I do worry about the Browns is they haven't got any COVID absences this week, and they've won the last 2 games while they've been missing COVID players. So
we're going to be practicing as well this week. We never practiced last week, so maybe that's something we need to look out for.
Probably should have had another week off, maybe, seeing as the way you played. Right, I'm backing the Chiefs to win, but I don't think they'll be winning by 10 points. Let's put it that way. Right, over to you, Cliff. Then last one, Saints Bucks. The old boys playing against each other. Veteran shootout. Who are you going for?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's Grandad v Grandpa. And something I heard earlier, nobody has ever beaten Tom Brady 3 times in a year. And currently the Saints are 2-0 up for this season. So they're aiming to make it the first time to beat Tom Brady in a season of 3-0. I mentioned before we started the podcast, this is the toughest game for me, I think, to pick. I've swapped my choice 3 or 4 times because I can see the offensive weapons that the Saints have got, I can see them putting up some points. But then there's just something in the back of my mind that's saying, it's Tom Brady. It's Tom Brady. He's hit form. Stick with Tom Brady in the playoffs. So, again, this is like the Seahawks and the Rams for me last week. It is a coin flip, and I'm going to just pick the Saints. I think they've just got a little bit too much for the Bucs defense to contain. And I think it'll be a very close game, this. I wouldn't touch the spread on this game at all.
Yeah, I do think the betting is very difficult this week. I'll be very surprised if we win our take a punt. We all know I'm on a bit of a dry patch at the minute, so it's not ideal either.
Just on you mentioning that Brady and Breeze being older quarterbacks, there's a stat floating around on Twitter that the average age of the 4 NFC starting quarterbacks, so Rodgers, Brady, Breeze, and Goff, is just over 37 years of age. Whereas for the AFC and Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, and Mayfield, the average age of those 4 is just under 25 years of age.
Wow.
So there's a huge difference in
12-year age gap in average age.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive, that. Very interesting, actually. Be interesting to see who obviously, what the final looks like with that as well. Right, moving on then. You've heard our picks for this week. You've heard them from the number 5 pickster in the world, and you've heard them from me and Nicko. We move on now to our Take a Punt feature. Nicko, talk us through the 3 picks that we're going to go for that are roughly close to evens this week.
So 3 picks, obviously only 4 games available. So we've gone with the Bills -3 against the Ravens. That's as I said, that's a close one, but I think the Bills will win. So I think it'll be just over the spread. Cleveland Browns +10 you've gone for. So you think they might lose still, but you think if they do, it'll be a tight one. And then Cliff's gone for over 46.5 points in the Packers-Rams game. And that is bang on 6-1.
Nicko, can you just mention how we got on last week as well on our Take a Punt?
Yeah.
Just who won and lost. That's all we need to know.
I think last week, Theo lost comfortably. I had Bills -3.5. They only won by 3, so that lost. And you had Washington +8.5, and they lost by 8, so you won by half a point. So just
Thank you.
I mean, can I just say a point there for the listeners? Doesn't matter in betting in a case in particular with the spread. It doesn't matter how much you win or lose by. You either win or you lose. So thanks for that, Nicko. Right, Nicko, you want to talk to us a little bit about the college final this week? Obviously, you love immersing yourself in all things American football. I'm a rookie. I'm new to all of this, so that's a bit further down the line for me. But I know you've dipped your toe a little bit in college football from time to time. Talk us through the final.
So, again, not a game I watched because it was an early 1 a.m. game on a Tuesday morning. But I watched the highlights the next day. Alabama versus Ohio State in the final. So you've got Mac Jones versus Justin Fields in the quarterback matchup. I thought it'd be a close one, but in the end, Alabama ran away with it. I think it was 52-24 winners. Devonta Smith, who just won the Heisman Trophy, he had a phenomenal first half. I think he set the record for the most receiving yards in the first half. I think it was 215 yards and 2 touchdowns or something around that figure. So they had an absolute whirlwind of a first half, and Ohio State just couldn't pull it back.
Very interesting. I think there's a lot of hype about Devonta Smith at the minute on Twitter. Very interested to see how he gets on next season, which team he ends up with. There are rumours he'd end up with the Eagles. Now, I think that's very ambitious, particularly now the fact Eagles have lost Pedersen. Don't know who the head coach is going to be. Person messaged me saying, not a great time to be an Eagles fan for me, but being a West Bromwich Albion football fan, I'm used to disappointment, misery, and supporting a rubbish team. So the Eagles were absolutely perfect for me.
Just a quick one before we move on. Just a bit of a shout out. We did our first giveaway on Twitter last week, and congratulations to Darren Fleming, who was the lucky winner out of all those who went.
Well done, Darren. Hope you enjoy your LaDainian Tomlinson jersey. Right, and can I just say a big thank you as well from me for all of those, for everyone who retweeted, got involved with the giveaway, got a lot of hype across the pond as well as in the UK, which was great to see. So big thank you to everyone who got involved with that, and a big thank you as well to Nicko, who gave it away from his own personal collection. Right, we have an extra special this week. Me and Cliff are very grateful that Justin Herbert didn't make it to the playoffs, so we haven't got a half a minute of Herbert this week. And I'm sure that Nicko could probably still talk about Herbert this week. He'd probably talk about his hair or something to do with his cheekbones or what his favourite food is or something daft like that. But we've got an extra special for you listeners. He moans every single week about Nicko's half a minute of Herbert. He said a couple of weeks ago that it almost makes him fall asleep. In fact, he said he could fall asleep within 30 seconds. Now is his moment. He bangs on about him day in, day out. We get messages upon messages about this man. He's even said that if he has another child, which he's not planning to at the minute, but if he does have another child, he's going to name it Baker.
Shout out to Cliff's wife there, who's just found out that she's now having a third child named Baker, whether it's a boy or a girl.
So we have for you today, listeners, a real treat. We have 1 minute of Mayfield. Big Cliff, over to you. 1 minute of Mayfield.
Have we only got one? Can we have 10?
Oh, of course, he's giving it the big one now. Right. 1 minute of Mayfield. Cliff, go.
So Baker Mayfield, how can you hate this guy? How can you hate him? He's the face of the Cleveland Browns. Now, I'm not going to bore you to death with stats and how far he threw and how many interceptions and all that. Well, he doesn't throw interceptions anymore, but I'm not going to bore you with that. What I'm going to say is I'm going to take you back 2 weeks to when you guys were texting me, Choker Mayfield, because he tried the quarterback sneak and he didn't make it. And what did he do? He come out in the press conference, it's on me. He took leadership. This guy has grown up. He's not blaming the presenters of shows or anything anymore. It was on him, not his teammates. The week after, we played the Steelers to get into the playoffs, and he runs. He would have ran through a brick wall to get in them playoffs. And then what does he do? COVID against us, no head coach. He delivers a victory against the Steelers away. That's all you've got to say about him. This guy is humble. He went over to Big Ben and shook his hand and says, well played. But really, the Browns is the Browns. And Baker Mayfield is back.
Hey! Just a little over there, but we'll let you off. It did take you a bit of you took a big deep breath at the start, so you bought yourself a couple of seconds there as well. So you've heard it there, listeners, and I will put the promise out there to you all right now. If the Browns get through this round of matches, if they manage to beat the Chiefs, if they upset the odds, they overturn the spread and they beat the Chiefs, we'll deliver with another minute of Mayfield next week for you, Clifford. How about that for a little treat? We unfortunately haven't got time for listeners' questions this week. We've mixed it up a little bit. So we're going to be ending on our wildcard question, as we always have. And this is where I always take you a little bit outside NFL. And I'm going to give you a question now for future listeners of the pod, hopefully, and something that we can put out on Twitter for anyone who might be interested in getting involved in NFL. Obviously, Cliff and Nicko, being involved in NFL for a few years, you all know that I'm a rookie to this, only picking it up this year, picking the Eagles. Been a bit of an up and down season in terms of the Eagles. I mean, lots more downs than ups. But I've enjoyed being involved. I've enjoyed being involved in the pod and learned quite a lot already in a very short space of time. So my question to you both is, what would you say to someone who hasn't watched NFL before and is looking to get involved next season? What tips would you have for wannabe NFL fans? Nicko first.
So when I was looking into it, I was thinking, do I watch a few games? So the only game I ever used to watch was the Super Bowl. I'd get up for it and obviously watch it. So I was like, I'm going to pick a team. I'm going to follow a team. Just watch every game of that week in, week out, and start to pick up some of the terms and the phrases that are used during a game. Understand the rules, just learn it that way. So I picked a team where it was somewhere that I'd likely visit in the future, and thought someone that's got a decent logo, some decent uniforms, in case I ever wanted to buy any of the merchandise or anything like that. I also didn't want to follow a team where I knew loads of people followed them because they were good. So like the Patriots have won so much, or the Packers and the Seahawks are well followed teams. I didn't want anything like that. So that's how I ended up with the Chargers. I thought, I'll visit LA, and I have done since. I have been and watched the game, watched them lose to the Texans. I would just say, pick a team, whether it's based on something like what I said, somewhere you want to visit, or even if it is following a player you've heard of. If it is you want to follow Patrick Mahomes and watch the Chiefs week in, week out, but at least you'll pick it up. And I think that's probably the easiest way to get into it.
Excellent. Thanks, Nicko. Cliff, what advice would you have for wannabe NFL fans?
So as Nicko mentioned, if you're picking based on the logo, I'd pick a better logo than the Chargers, if I'm honest. But my advice would be more, when you're watching the game, just stick with it, because I know a couple of my friends have said, how can you watch it? There's too many interruptions, there's too many breaks in the game and so on. But I just think when you watch it, and especially when it comes to a close game in the fourth quarter, you're hooked, and you feel like the breaks, the interruptions, the commercial breaks, etc. You feel like the flyby and the back on the pitch, the back on the field straight away. So yeah, that's my advice that I've said to a couple of my friends recently. Just watch a game, just watch it through, and I guarantee you'll enjoy the whole experience of watching the game in the end.
On that, when a play happens and then it cuts to a break while they're setting up for the next snap, they show you a replay anyway, so you see what happened, you see it in a bit more detail and get some commentary from the experienced pundits and commentators, and then it's ready to go for the next one. And also the three of us, we've all picked teams that recent years haven't done great, haven't won that many trophies. Obviously the Eagles did win a Super Bowl a few years back, but so we were all at the minute in, or have been in the last year, at a low point where they're not winning many games. And then you never know, one of us might see us lift a Super Bowl in the future.
Can I just say that, talking of a positive outcome, recently in the Premier League, Southampton, who I linked a couple of podcasts ago to the Browns, I said they was most like the Browns, beat Liverpool, and the manager, Ralph Hasenhuttl, started crying on the pitch. And did you see his interview after? He says, this is dedicated to Cliff for linking us with the Browns. And since then, they've gone on and beat Liverpool. And I just wanted to shout out Ralph. So thanks, Ralph, for the big call out in the interview.
Well, that's it now. The Saints in football beat Liverpool. Will the Browns beat the Chiefs? Similar sort of occasion, similar sort of level of team. So we'll be very interested to see how that goes. One tip I will say, from a rookie to a new rookie, is that watch Red Zone. I've got to say, for what viewers in the UK, Red Zone is a fantastic way to get into NFL. It gives you all the action. There's no breaks in it. And it really gets you up to speed with all of the action and what happens in an NFL game. So I've got to say, for me, Red Zone has been the key. Haven't watched as many games in full. I've tended to stick with Red Zone so I can get a real feel for all of the games across the evening on a Sunday, which obviously gives me a bit of help when it comes to the pick'ems. Also, didn't really want to put myself through watching the Eagles every week. It was pretty painful. It's hard enough watching West Bromwich Albion. So, listeners, that wraps up our second playoff special. We'll be back again next week when it's getting really serious. So we'll be delivering with a pod for you with some quality content for our listeners. Thank you to everyone who follows us on socials, particularly shout out to the Chargers fans, as I said earlier, who got involved with our giveaway. Hope you enjoy the pod. We look forward to hearing from you all next week. Stay safe, listeners, and enjoy the games this weekend.